Top of the morning, my people. How y'all doing this morning? Hope you've been doing okay. Um, yeah, so, okay. So this is pretty much the right here. Okay, yeah. So, how y'all doing? I have been listening to some things, and this morning kind of want to take us down the rabbit hole. Not a difficult conversation, easy conversation. And it has to do with when we say, I believe something, it is normally something that we can't prove. And the things that we say we know are things that we can prove. There are times when people will use the terms, I believe, I know, and they'll recognize that the thing that they said they know is really something that they believe, as in they can't prove it. There's a start out, they'll say, I know he took the thing, but if you can't prove it, then you don't know. And so what you're left with is that you believe that the person took the thing, or that the person said the thing, or whatever the circumstances. So there's this guy I was listening to, and after playing it over in my head, I think I kind of see what the guy did. So there's this guy called Panji, and Panji, in his discussion with a guy called Richie Mensa, it's called Mastermind series, where they talk about, he invites different people on and they talk about different things. Um, Part of it is a black consciousness, as it more, not, I shouldn't say black consciousness, more like an African consciousness, because one of the things that many people don't recognize is that the things that many people of African origin who are in the so-called New World, in the would have been part of what is called the African diaspora. Many of the things that we believe is what the colonizers taught us. And this is whether the colonizers be Spanish, French, Portuguese, Dutch, or British, all colonizers who set up systems to extract resources, whether those resources were natural resources or those resources came from our free labor. And most people, when they hear these conversations, they immediately jump to the defense to say, but slavery existed in on the African continent. Slavery existed throughout the world. But a system was a new form of slavery was created in the colonies. And that form of slavery was what they call chattel slavery, meaning you were enslaved and you became property. And in the Bible, one of the books that the colonizers presented to us, it talks about slavery. But it was not referring to the slave being your property. It referred to the slave being the person you're subjugated to, the person who you have to answer to, but not that you were property. People entered slavery in times past. People willingly entered slavery. One of the writers, Paul, spoke about bondservant. Yes. This is where there is a debt that needs to be paid. And what you offer is your labor, what we now would call sweat equity, to pay off that debt. And when that debt was paid off, you are free to go. They also had this system referring to, and it spoke about it. It says that there's no debt that should go past 7 years. You shouldn't have to give more than 7 years. And there's I believe it is the story about Jacob and the sweat equity that he gave to his uncle Laban. He wanted to marry Rachel, but he did not have anything to offer as a dowry. So he gave sweat equity to his uncle. He became a bond servant to his uncle. His uncle tricked him, and his justification for the trick was that, but you can't marry off the younger sister before the older sister. So he gave him Leah first and said, you only have to work another 7 years, or another period. I believe it is 7 years. And it's done to be corrected on the numbers. The point there, though, is that in order to get Rachel now, he had to work another 7 years, another 7 years of sweat equity to be able to get the person he wanted. So the concept of bondservant existed, but the chattel slavery that they created in the so-called New World was not one in which you're a bondservant. It was one in which you were property. And the plantation owner counted you as livestock within the records that they kept of these plantations. The slaves were listed among the cattle as property. So this was not a matter of you paying off a debt. What was you? Because you do what debt? You didn't owe any debt. You were captured. Bands were formed to go out and capture people. To send them on ships, which, there are multiple ways of looking at that whole situation. Because it could be that many times things are done for nefarious, for negative, for wrong reasons, but they actually serve to benefit in the same book that they gave. Which, if you do enough reading and you do enough research, you'll find out that the book is really many things that were written in other forms that were captured. And there are those who, I guess who I would say, they swallow hook, line, and sinker. And they never question any of what they read. As a child, I was always one who questioned. As a teenager, I questioned more, much to the upset of others. I was not gullible. And when there's a circumstance in my life where my father passed away. I was about between 8 and 9 years old when that happened. And it caused me to question a number of things. The last time I saw my father alive, he was in a hospital bed. Tubes coming from him. I really didn't understand what was going on. The next time I saw my father, he was now passed, and he was in a box. And I didn't understand what was this. And back then, nobody spent time to explain to children. So the first time I was experiencing this thing called death. And I know sometimes the way I speak, people think, oh, man, you just jump all over the place. But bear with me. All these things are connected. This is the background as to why it is that I question things. I question the things that I don't understand. Why is it so? never really ever got any proper answers. And I remember there was that period where I went to for every funeral. It was like I was doing what I call funeral hopping, going from funeral to funeral, trying to understand what is this thing, what is this death thing. Until I got to a point where, okay, recognize that this was something that happens, and it was not reserved for any particular age group or condition. Sick people died, old people died, healthy people died, children died. And so I came to recognize that the Grim Reaper is a respecter of no one. When the Grim Reaper show up, he simply say, "Whoop!" Nothing at all. One of my favorite movies is Meet Joe Black, starring Brad Pitt and Anthony Hopkins. Very interesting movie. There's actually a Jamaican lady did a part in it. I can't remember her name right now. But for those of you who are movie buffs, you know what I'm talking about. So I question stuff. So there's this whole business of this chattel slavery, different form of slavery, one in which even the children born of the slave were slaves. To the point where in some places, when they recognized that slavery was going to end, instead of working the slaves harder, what they created were pretty much breeding plantations. Breeding as in BREEDING. Breeding plantations. Because kind of treating us like a pig farm. So, as I mentioned, the pig, I'll make mention of this. So, this guy Panji dropped a number of things on the host of the program, Richie. And one of the things that Panji said was, that in terms of similarity in organ structure and so on, we're most our closest the closest animal is the pig, and there's research out there that shows. Matter of fact, I think it was in 2022 or one of those years. Since it's within the last couple of years, they actually did a heart transplant where they transferred the heart of a pig into a man. From what I understand, the man is still alive. He had he had a very serious heart condition, and they decided to use a pig's heart. They also have been doing studies regarding pig skin. That the pig skin, in the absence of human skin, they've been using pig skin in things like skin grafts, and the way in which the pig skin is the way it is, it's closest to human skin. As a matter of fact, one of the things that they said in terms of the way in which the hair is distributed across the body of a pig, very similar to its distributed across the body of a human. We're not saying that we came from pigs, okay? But in terms of compatibility, pig has been proven to be the closest. There are fewer organ rejections. They even found that insulin produced by the pig is missing only one item when compared to the insulin that we produce as humans. So Panji gave all these different things. Panji spoke about, it was a wide thing, and what Panji did was give the host a number of things, and the host, his general thing is that after a guest has been on his program, he then goes and does some, like let's say, a fact checking of what the person said, and he comes back and he presents it, and just with the facts. And there's one thing that Panji spoke about was this thing about Moses or Musa or Moshe leaving Egypt. This whole business about crossing the Red Sea, and the way Panji said it was that these rivers had a period in which they were dry, and what in times past what they may have considered to be a sea may have actually been a river, a large river, and during certain times of the year it would dry up, and this is what Moses carried the Israelites across. So after he had gone through the different things about the things that Panji had said, and he brought, was able to relate the historical evidence of what it was Panji said, and how the history backed up what he said, he got to a point where he said, he was unable to find any historical records to support Moses and the Israelites crossing the Red Sea. Now, while listening to this, I found this very interesting because one of the things that I had always said within my own, had in my thoughts and sent out in conversation with people was that most of you have heard about the Holocaust. And there are museums and all these things almost everywhere regarding the Holocaust. There's a great effort to remind us of the Holocaust. And I remember that I think it was Steven Spielberg who made a movie called Prince of Egypt. Now, when he made the movie Prince of Egypt, one of the things that was striking, because if we go back to let me see, Charlton Heston, that American actor, every instance that we had seen before that of Moses, they presented Moses as Caucasian, as just like how they presented the Israelites as Caucasians. What was striking with Prince of Egypt, and of course this was made when Spielberg had made his money and he could afford to fund his own films. It was made in a kind of like a cartoon version, but he made it where Moses was dark skinned, which to many people was shocking. And I guess when you look back at it, people look at it and say, see, I told you, the Israelites are black people or dark skinned people. And if you go back to areas of the New Testament, when they gave the decree, oh, kill the firstborn, and Mary and Joseph fled to Egypt. And when I would hear that, I would say, but hold on. If the images that we have got now is of our white Jesus, right? So if Moses, if Jesus was white and Egypt were dark skinned people, how is it that you could flee to Egypt and they wouldn't be able to find you? And I said something's wrong with that picture, because if you're fleeing and you're hiding, you don't want to stand out. I mean, I don't see which one of the raisins in my bowl of oatmeal can hide from me. The raisins are all dark, and the oatmeal is all of a light color, cream color, white if you want to call it so. Huh? So none of the raisins can hide. And I always thought it odd. Why would you flee to Egypt? Because if you were white in Bethlehem, then you'd be amongst your own people. Why go to an area where the people are dark? Hmm. Not only did he flee to Egypt once, he fled to Egypt again as a teenager. And I said, but this is weird. Clearly, you couldn't go hiding amongst white people, white people if you're dark, or dark people if you're white. It just don't make any sense. Now, many people will look at Egypt today and they will say, "Oh, but Egyptians are Arabs." But if you do some research, you'll realize that no, these aren't these Egyptians that you see now. And this is one of the things that got what's his name? I think it was Kevin Hart. He had made some statement about this, and they tried to cancel him over it. But if you go back to one of the leaders of Egypt, let me see his name. Anwar Sadat. Right, that's the name, Sadat. He was a black man. He was the president or prime minister of Egypt back in the day. So what has really happened in the Egypt of today is that they have done a kind of like a whitening, a lightening of the color, importing a lot of Arabs, you know, to lighten the complexion of the people and make it seem as if though that these were the original peoples. Let us not be silly. Egypt is on the continent of Africa. Africa is primarily dark-skinned people. This is where dark-skinned people come from. This is where, and it has been proven, civilization started on the African continent. Okay? And those of you who don't want to believe that, that's fine. The historical proof is there. But there's also historical proof to say that every person has that gene. So the truth, one of the truths is that there are no white people. Jane Elliott, famous for trying to, you know, break down this whole racism thing, especially amongst children. It has been proven that we are all out of Africa. We all came out of black heritage. There is the proofs that complexion lightened because of climate conditions. Those were the things that led to the whitening. It is known also that people who are of certain dark hues, if they stay indoors long enough, for most of the time, they end up becoming lighter in complexion because the purpose of the melanin in your skin is to protect you from the sun. You go to the beach. What does your body naturally do when you go to the beach? It darkens. It is that darkening that protects you from the sun. Not to mention, in this whole process, you get vitamin D, etc., etc. If I can read the science. Right. So, back to Panji. What I suspect Panji did was, in the conversation, present a number of items, number of topics that could be fact checked. And the only thing that could not be fact checked was this Moses story. That this Exodus could not be found in the historical records. And I think what Panji did was do that to cause this whole research to take place. And Richie came up blank. And it takes me back to what I started with. There are things that you say you believe, and there are things that you say you know. How do you know certain things? And the things that you know, most of the time, you can prove that you never ever need to say, I believe this. And the things that you say you believe, many times, you have no proof. And that belief is most times an emotional state, a state of mind, a position that you've taken. And so I challenge you. I challenge you today. Take a look at the things that you say you know, and take a look at the things that you say you believe. It's funny, in the very same book, it says you should test these things. You should question things. And you'll hear some people try to tell you that, oh, it's wrong to question. But why? Why is it wrong to question it? If, and I've said this many times, if there is an afterlife, another place that we go, and it is dependent on me doing certain things in the place where I am now, wouldn't I want to get it right? Because as far as I know, and in the years of my living, I've not seen anybody come back after having left this place for a do-over. So I think it would make sense to ensure that what I know, and that the actions I'm taking regarding this place that I'm working towards, I'm doing the things that will get me there. Because then if it's not based on the things I do, then what is it based on? Okay, mercy. I'll have mercy on whom I'll have mercy. How do I know then that I will obtain that mercy? And then is it what? Is it just a roll of the dice? Is that what it is? Is it just a roll of the dice? So I would say take a moment and think about what you believe and what you know. The things you know, you can prove. The things you believe, many times, you can't prove. And it's just a position that you've taken. Yeah, we've gotten to that point where we're going to transition into some of those, go down some rabbit holes and really look into things. I'm at that age. I'm looking into a lot of things because it is likely that I have less time ahead of me than behind me. And I'd like to know. Father Paul here. Talk again soon.